Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'd like to talk about a worldwide social issue that each country struggles with in their own way. This is healthcare. Healthcare, as we see it, is something of a necessity. Healthcare being an issue that is decided on a case by case basis per country means that there's several different iterations of the system throughout the world. The overarching issue surrounding this is whether or not a given country really considers healthcare a human right. This has been something in an argument because when you look at the issue from a broad lens, it seems cut and dry. Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights clearly, without any uncertain terms, states that healthcare is in fact a human right. For that matter, Article 27 states that everyone has the right to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. If the terms of whether or not healthcare is a human right are so clearly stated, then why is this an issue? The answer is because there's countries around the world that handle it in ways that are functional in theory, but not so much in practice, or simply can't produce enough doctors in order to serve all of the civilians. Most of these countries are in Africa and other less developed areas. Liberia is one example where there's 14 doctors to every 1 million people. It's true that this deficit is certainly due to the fact that their economic and educational systems are just underdeveloped. The international community attempts to offset this gap by providing support. International organizations have been formed, like the World Health Organizations, for such support. The question I often hear asked is, why help these people at all? The answer is simple. Within the international community, it's been a long-term goal that at some point in the future, the world will establish a standard of living across the board. I think this is good. I believe in that goal. But that being said, I also personally believe that progress can't really be made in this department until we develop a system that works properly. So the United States is home to one of the most dysfunctional healthcare systems out of any country. With that, the U.S. is the only highly developed nation in the whole world that doesn't necessarily have some form of universal healthcare. So, for those of you who aren't necessarily sure, universal healthcare is essentially when the healthcare system of a given country covers the most substantial portion of its population on a level of just basic needs. So citizens would receive yearly visits to the doctor, prescription insurance, maybe, and maybe even medical attention for emergencies under the system. Of course, this all costs money, and there's various systems that suggest how things should be paid for. One of which is where it's perceived that all benefits citizens receive through the government are free, so to speak. No, of course, it's not really free. It is included in everybody's taxes, of course. Another system is a kind of cost reduction where everybody does have health care through the government, but they're still expected to pay their own version of a copay, right? The government covers the bulk of the cost, the citizens pay the rest. Norway is one of these countries. It's ranked to have what is possibly the most effective system developed thus far. I read up on exactly how this system functions, and in all honesty, I had to read it about 3 times to comprehend it. With that, I'll give everybody at home the Spark Notes version, right? So the Norwegian government owns hospitals and provides coverage to all their citizens. This is so that they can achieve an environment in which as few people as possible had less coverage than everybody else. The government funds all the hospitals and medical programs for anything like an emergency room visit, an appointment with a physician, or a prescription that's entirely necessary that everybody might need at some point, like an antibiotic, right? The government then decides what exactly they will be covering based upon their current economic position every number of years or so. Once again, the goal is to cover everyone's basic needs regardless of income. All citizens are then strongly advised to purchase privatized insurance on a case-by-case basis. This is so that the government isn't covering all of its citizens for disease or disability that the vast majority of them don't even have. The privatized insurance is only there to cover what is referred to as acute services. The only flaw in the system is that the government has to spend a considerable amount of its income on their universal health care, but it does work. The United States, on the other hand, well, that's not how it works. There are, in fact, systems put in place like the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, as it's often referred to, that helps. Though, in a nutshell, the American healthcare system is every man for themselves, right? Healthcare is largely privatized, thusly, everyone's paying it for it all by themselves. Unless, of course, someone's receiving it through their place of employment. In that case, it's almost like having a million miniature universal healthcare systems. The healthcare provided through an employer is going to work for some people, but not everyone, which causes some to seek additional insurance outside of what's already being provided for them. If someone doesn't have insurance benefits through their employer, however, they need to purchase it privately. The only other option would be through the Affordable Care Act, which provides pretty basic coverage. The system's not super functional. Don't get me wrong, it does work mostly, but it only works for those who can really afford it. The United States frequently prides itself on being a capitalist country. This is almost like a system of universal health care that's attempting to heavily favor a capitalist system. I'm not often one to say that a compromise can't be made, but in this case, given the information I've gathered, I feel like when it comes to healthcare, it's one or the other. The system will likely only work nearly flawlessly if it chooses a path. If we had universal healthcare, taxes would likely be higher, but there would also be a higher standard of living. If there were an entirely capitalist system in place, it's likely that privatized healthcare would profit so greatly that the corporations could afford to lower the cost so that nearly everyone could afford it. Furthermore, just to clarify, I don't really believe that the United States healthcare system is violating any human right, or that any government truly means to violate human rights that were set forth. I do believe that some nations don't put significant effort towards solving the problem from a nonpartisan mindset. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you very much. That's all I have for today. See you guys next time.